Ruth Kowalski knelt in a Gary, Indiana cellar in 1943 and pressed $11 into a mason jar buried in the dirt floor. Her husband earned $43 a week at the steel mill. 6 children ate from a ration book. 5 years later, that jar bought the row house outright. And the neighbors whispered, her husband must have been promoted. He had not. Tonight, 25 forgotten habits. Number 23 turned $1 into 60. Number 11 reached federal posters. Number 2 funded $185 billion. Subscribe before the count begins. Let us begin. Number 25. Helen Vasquez, a longshoreman's wife in Baltimore, 1942. She kept the family ration book pinned to the kitchen wall on a length of butcher's twine, and beside it a pencil stub tied to the same string. Every stamp spent was logged the moment it left the book. Sugar, coffee, butter, meat, with the date and the price. 16 ration points for a pound of beef at 32 cents. 8 points for a pound of butter at 46. By the end of 1943, she had saved $187 by knowing, to the stamp, what the family had left. The book was the ledger was the budget. They didn't track spending, they tracked permission. Number 24, Mabel Hutchins, a mill worker's wife in Wheeling, West Virginia, 1944. Beside her stove sat a Maxwell House coffee can, lid pierced with a nail hole, half full of bacon grease. Every Sunday morning, she poured the skillet drippings through a square of cheesecloth into the can. That grease-fried potatoes on Monday, greased pie tins on Wednesday, and went to the butcher on Saturday in exchange for 2 ration points per pound. Federal program posted right behind the counter. Over the war years, she turned roughly 19 pounds of saved fat into 38 extra ration points and a steady supply of frying medium that cost her nothing. The can never went into the trash. The trash didn't exist yet. Number 23. Dorothy Pearson, a foreman's wife in Columbus, Ohio, 1943. She tore up 240 square feet of side yard grass, planted tomatoes, beans, beets, cabbage, and put up 84 quarts of canned vegetables that winter. The seed packets cost her $1.12 at Woolworths. 84 quarts at the A&P that year would have run $60 and change. She turned $1 of seed into $60 of pantry. The lawn was patriotic. The harvest was a paycheck. Number 22. Ingrid Lindqvist, a bookkeeper's wife in Hartford, Connecticut, 1943. She owned 3 pairs of silk stockings, and when the runs came, she sat at the parlor lamp with a wooden darning egg and a needle finer than a hair, weaving the silk back together until the repair was invisible at arm's length. New stockings, when you could find them, were $1.25 a pair. She made 3 pairs last the entire war. The egg was the tool. The patience was the wage. Number 21. Frances O'Donnell, a tire plant worker's wife in Akron, Ohio, 1943. She flattened every tin can on the back step with the heel of a cast iron skillet. Top removed, bottom removed, sides crushed flat, and stacked them in a bushel basket by the door. Every 2 weeks, she walked the basket to Petrosky's grocery on Market Street. Old man Petrosky weighed it, nodded, and slipped her an extra quarter pound of butter under the counter. No stamps asked. The cans were patriotic salvage. The relationship was the real currency. The grocer was the receipt. Number 20. Margaret Sullivan, a Navy chief's wife in San Diego, 1942. The morning her husband shipped out, she walked to the Bank of America on Broadway and bought an $18.75 Series E war bond. Before she paid the rent on their bungalow, rent was $32 a month. She paid the bond first, the rent second, the milkman third. By 1946, the bond had matured to $25, and she owned 41 of them. She didn't save what was left. She saved what came first. Number 19. Eunice Bauer, a railroad clerk's wife in Topeka, Kansas, 1943. On her sink sat a wire cage the size of a fist, holding the stub ends of every bar of soap the family had ever used. When the cage was full, she swished it through the dishwater, and the slivers became suds. A bar of ivory was 9 cents at the Rexall. She bought 4 bars in 1943. Her sister bought 22. The cage saved $1.17. The cage also saved a habit. Number 18. Loretta Boudreau, a refinery worker's wife in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 1943. Coffee was rationed to 1 pound every 5 weeks. She stretched it by roasting chicory root from the garden in a dry skillet, grinding it in the same hand mill, and mixing it 1-to-1 with the Maxwell House. The pound lasted 10 weeks instead of 5. Coffee at the grocer was 31 cents a pound. The chicory cost nothing but the digging. She didn't drink less, she drank longer. Number 17. Verna Hoeksema, a corn farmer's wife in Story County, Iowa, 1944. 43 Pillsbury flour sacks, printed with small blue and yellow florals, accumulated in her linen chest over 2 years. One winter, she cut them into squares, pieced them by lamplight, and stitched a queen-size quilt that covered her marriage bed for the next 41 years. A Sears catalog quilt that year ran $8.95. Hers cost the thread. The flour bag was free. The quilt was the dowry, 9 habits down. The kitchen has been emptied of its lessons. The curb has given up its dimes, 16 to go. By 1955, the rate had fallen to 8%. By 2005, under 3%. The wages had not collapsed. The wages had risen. What collapsed was the teaching. The mothers who knew stopped being asked. The daughters who watched stopped watching. The granddaughters inherited the houses and the furniture and the silver, but not the ledger and not the jar. The ledger was the inheritance. Nobody read the will. Back to the countdown. Number 16. Stella Wojcik, a steel mill foreman's wife in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 1943. She owned the only pressure cooker on Larimer Avenue. A Presto, $12.95 at Sears, bought before the war, and 4 households shared it on a rotating Saturday schedule. Stella canned tomatoes one week, Mrs. Petrosian canned peaches the next, then the Donnellys, then the Bianchis. Across one summer, the 4 families put up 700 quarts of preserves. Each family's share would have cost $41 at the A&P. None of them paid it. The pot was Stella's, the harvest was everyone's. Number 15. Verna Whitley, a coal miner's wife in Logan County, West Virginia, 1943. Once a month, she rendered hog fat in a black iron kettle in the backyard, stirred in a tin of Red Devil lye and a dipper of rainwater from the cistern, and poured the result into a wooden box lined with butcher paper. When it cooled, she cut it into 36 bars. Ivory at the company store was 11 cents a bar. Her cost per bar was under 2 cents. She made the family soap for the entire war. The kettle was older than her marriage. So was the recipe. Number 14. Bernice Jankowski, a tool and die maker's wife in Fort Wayne, Indiana, 1943. Every Saturday, she put a beef shank, 18 cents a pound, 4 points on the ration, into the stock pot at dawn. Sunday, it was pot roast. Monday, beef and noodles. Tuesday, hash with the leftover potatoes. Wednesday, soup with the bone. Thursday, beans cooked in the broth. Friday, gravy on bread. Saturday, the bone went to the dog and a new shank went in the pot. 7 meals from 1 ration stamp. Her sister-in-law in Chicago bought a fresh cut every other day and ran out of stamps by the 18th. Bernice never did. The pot was the strategy. Number 13. Edith Krumholtz, a tractor mechanic's wife in Wichita, Kansas, 1943. A single sheet of Reynolds aluminum foil entered her kitchen, covered a casserole, came off, was washed in the dishwater, smoothed flat against the breadboard with the back of a spoon, folded and put in the drawer. The same sheet served 30 to 40 meals before it tore beyond use. A roll of foil was 23 cents at the Piggly Wiggly. She bought 2 rolls during the entire war. Her neighbor bought 11. The difference paid for a winter coat. The foil was the lesson. The drawer was the proof. Number 12. Rose Calabrese, a dockworker's wife in Boston, Massachusetts, 1943. At sundown, she pulled every window shade in the 3-bedroom flat down to the sill, not for the air raid warden, but for the steam radiator bill. The shades cost 42 cents apiece at Jordan Marsh. They cut the heat loss through the windows by roughly a third. Her coal bill that winter ran $68. The neighbor across the hall, with identical windows and identical drafts, paid $104. The shade was a coat for the house. Number 11. Della Hargrove, a furniture factory inspector's wife in Memphis, Tennessee, 1941. Above her kitchen sink, written in pencil on a piece of cardboard cut from a Quaker Oats box, were 6 words: use it up, wear it out. She had written them in 1934, in the depth of the Depression, 7 years before the War Production Board printed the same words on the federal poster that hung in every post office from Portland to Pensacola. She had not copied the government. The government had copied her. The cardboard hung in her kitchen until she died in 1971. The poster was a slogan. The cardboard was a creed. Number 10. Helen Marzalek, a Marine drill instructor's wife in Quantico, Virginia, 1943. When the center of a bedsheet wore through, she did not throw the sheet away. She cut it down the worn middle, turned the 2 halves so the strong outer edges met in the center, and stitched them together on a treadle singer. 2 more years of sleep out of 1 sheet. A new percale double sheet at Sears was $1.79. She turned 6 sheets that way during the war. The seam ran down the middle of the bed for the rest of her marriage. Her husband never noticed. She never mentioned it. 16 down. The community has been heard from. The borrowed pot, the homemade soap, the Saturday stock pot, the folded foil, the drawn shade, the cardboard creed, the turned sheet. All of it stitched together by women who did not call themselves frugal because they had no other word for living. 9 habits remain. The arithmetic gets quieter from here. Number 9. Hilda Brunner, a meatpacker's wife in Omaha, Nebraska, 1943. Once a month, her husband brought home suet trimmings from the Cudahy plant. Scraps the foreman let workers carry off in a paper sack. Hild rendered the fat in a low oven all Saturday afternoon, strained it through a flour sack towel, and poured it into clean lard tins. The result was beef tallow, a cooking fat, a pie crust shortening, a leather conditioner for her husband's work boots, and the base for the lye soap she made in October. A pound of Crisco at the Hinky Dinky was 24 cents. She bought 3 pounds during the war. The scraps were free. The Saturday was the price. Number 8. Imogene Tatum, a railroad bridge inspector's wife in Roanoke, Virginia, 1943. A pair of cotton work socks ran 15 cents at the dime store. When her husband's heel wore through, Imogene mounted the sock on a wooden darning egg, took a needle and gray cotton thread, and wove a fresh patch. Over, under, until the whole became a small, dense square stronger than the original cloth. A single pair of socks kept in rotation lasted 4 years and cost 2 cents in thread to keep alive. The egg was the loom, the patch was the wage. The wage compounded 1 hole at a time. Number 7. Cora Yancey, a Navy yeoman's wife in Norfolk, Virginia, 1943. On the inside of the cast iron tub, 2 inches up from the drain, her husband had drawn a horizontal pencil line before he shipped out. Saturday night baths went no higher. 2 inches of hot water, drawn once, used by all 5 children in turn, from cleanest to dirtiest, then by Cora last. The coal-fired water heater burned roughly a third less coal that winter than the Yanceys next door, who shared the same model heater and the same 6-person household. The mark cost nothing. The discipline cost everything. The line on the tub was a wall against the bill. Number 6. Adelaide Pomerantz, a brewery worker's wife in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 1943. Eggs were rationed and uncertain. She baked a chocolate cake without them. Flour, sugar, cocoa, vinegar, baking soda, oil, water. Mixed in the pan, she baked it in to save a bowl. The neighbors called it wacky cake, and the recipe traveled the block on the back of an envelope. A dozen eggs at the Kroger were 57 cents that month when you could find them. Adelaide baked 19 wacky cakes during the war. The cake was a small defiance. The defiance fed 19 birthdays. Number 5. Lucinda Marchetti, a steel foundry crane operator's wife in Buffalo, New York, 1943. Every Thursday at 7, 4 women climbed the porch steps of the Marchetti parlor with their work baskets. Mrs. Bukowski, Mrs. Antonelli, Mrs. Schneider, Mrs. Halloran. 2 hours of mending under the floor lamp, a turned collar, a patched knee, a rehemmed skirt, a coat lining cut from an old blanket. Coffee was poured. Gossip was exchanged. The work that would have cost $2.75 at the tailor on Fillmore Avenue was done for the price of a pot of chicory. Across 1 year, the parlor saved the 5 families $140 and changed not a single dollar of it. The parlor was the shop. The friendship was the wage. Number 4. Wilma Bergstrom, an auto worker's wife in Flint, Michigan, 1943. Behind the bungalow, 4 cedar posts and 40 feet of cotton line. From April through November, she hung the wash. From December through March, she hung it on a wooden rack in the basement beside the coal furnace, where the rising heat dried the sheets overnight for free. 51 weeks of laundry a year, no electric dryer, no gas dryer, no coin laundromat. Across 43 years of marriage, the line and the rack saved the Bergstroms an estimated $1,800 in fuel and machine costs and 1 replacement appliance. The line was $3, the marriage was 43 years, the math was patient. Number 3. Marjorie Halloran, a Marine corporal's wife at Camp Pendleton, California, 1943. The first day of every month, her allotment check arrived from the Marine Corps Finance Center, $112.50. And Marjorie sat at the kitchen table with 4 envelopes already addressed in her hand. Rent, war bond, savings passbook, mother-in-law in Scranton. She wrote 4 checks in that order before she walked 1 block to the commissary for groceries. By the time she fed the family, the future had already been fed. She did not save what was left. She left what was saved. 7 habits in this stretch. The countdown narrows, the arithmetic sharpens, 2 remain. Number 2. Across the United States in 1943, 27 million American workers signed a single piece of paper at the personnel office and never thought about it again. The paper authorized the payroll department to deduct a fixed sum from every paycheck, $3, $4, 10%, whatever the worker chose, and convert it into Series E war bonds before the worker ever saw the money. The Treasury called it the payroll savings plan. The factories called it the 10% club. The workers called it paying the war first. By 1945, those automatic deductions had funded $185 billion in war bonds, a sum greater than the entire federal budget of 1940. A welder in Mobile, a riveter in Long Beach, a bus driver in Cincinnati, a stenographer in Trenton, none of them rich, none of them advised by anyone with a license, had collectively financed the largest war in human history out of money they had agreed in advance never to touch. 40 years later, in 1981, a financial advisor in Denver named George Clayson's disciples reissued an idea in a hardcover book and called it Pay Yourself First. It was sold as a revelation. It was sold at seminars. It was sold at $29.95 a copy. The factory workers had been doing it since 1942. They had not needed a book. They had needed a clipboard at the personnel office and a foreman who said, sign here. The deduction was the discipline. The discipline was the wealth. The wealth came off the top, not off the bottom, and what came off the top was never missed because it had never been seen. That is the rule beneath the rule. Never let your hands touch the money you mean to keep. Number 1. Spend less than you earn. 6 words. No author claims them. No book sold them. No advisor charges for them. They are the floor under every other habit in this countdown. The foundation on which the mason jar, the ledger, the ration book calendar, the bacon grease can, the victory garden, the darned silk stocking, the flattened tin, the war bond, the soap saver cage, the chicory coffee, the floral feed sack quilt, the borrowed pressure cooker, the homemade soap, the 7 meals stock pot, the washed foil, the drawn shade, the cardboard creed, the turned bed sheet, the rendered tallow, the woven sock patch, the 2-inch bath line, the wacky cake, the Thursday parlor, the flint clothesline, the 4 envelopes, and the payroll deduction all rest. 24 habits. 1 rule. Every other rule is just a method for keeping that rule on a particular Tuesday in a particular kitchen. Ruth Kowalski did not know the savings rate of the United States in 1944. She did not know the Bureau of Labor Statistics existed. She did not know what a portfolio was, or a yield curve, or a tax-advantaged retirement account. She knew that her husband's paycheck was $43, that $4.30 went to the war before she saw it, that $11 went to the mason jar before she bought a single pound of flour, and that what was left had to feed 8 people for 7 days. She wore the same dress to St. Mary's 3 Easters in a row. The neighbors noticed. They took it as evidence of poverty. They were wrong. Ruth Kowalski could not be reached by hunger, by foreclosure, or by a War Department telegram. The dress was old, the pantry was full, the deed was hers. We called their way of life making do. We meant it as an insult, that was its genius. Comfort is not security, convenience is not freedom. A full pantry is built by what you refuse to buy, not by what you can afford to. The women who ran these households did not look prosperous in 1944. They looked tired, they looked plain, they looked behind the times. And underneath the tired plain behind the times surface, they were arranging their lives so that no employer, no landlord, no salesman, and no government could tell them what to do with their Tuesday afternoon in 1968. That is, the inheritance the granddaughters did not receive. Not the houses, not the bonds, not the $71,000 in the credit union. Those are the artifacts. The inheritance is the arithmetic. The daily, dull, unglamorous arithmetic of spending less than you earn and putting the difference somewhere your hands cannot easily reach. The mason jar is still buried somewhere under the renovated row house on the west side of Gary. The current owners do not know it is there. They paid $470,000 for the property in 2022 and financed $396,000 of it. Ruth Kowalski paid $3,200 for the same house in 1948 in cash, $11 at a time, in a glass jar in a cellar behind a coal bin that no longer exists. The coal bin is gone, the jar is still there. What you keep still matters more than what you earn. Paid.